and welcome to a solo episode of Love Unravelled. Isabel's on a holiday, so I thought I would do a quicker sort of straight shooting podcast, just going through some little bits of advice we asked on our Instagram, and we just thought I would chat through from my own experience as to what I think kind of makes a good leader of a brand. And full disclaimer, we are still in our infancy, so it's basically just what I have taken on and what I am learning as we go. The things that people ask me what I read and what I listen to as far as sort of to get inspiration about leadership. So I do like the Simon Sinek books, which I know are kind of a bit of Marmite. I love the Grace Beverley podcast. I do like the Diary of a CEO. I'm looking forward to actually listening to Odd Muse's podcast as well. I haven't started that one yet, but that's something I'm looking forward to. But I do like any kind of podcast where other brand owners are interviewed, because I always think they're quite a similar type of person, and it's really interesting to see how different CEOs will manage different parts of their brand, especially in the early days. I think it's really interesting when you have sort of more of a grip on everything. So I'm going to talk about today about the power of saying no, which will sound to some people probably like you should take every opportunity that comes your way. And I do think there's an element where you definitely have to push yourself out of your comfort zone, which I find really hard. It's something that I've had to learn to embrace, that feeling, that sort of pit in your stomach. You know, when you've done something that maybe you shouldn't, or you know that you need to tell the truth about something, and you realize the opportunity is there for you to do it, and it feels like it's niggling and you need to just do it. And then, although it might not be comfortable to do, in the long term you feel that relief. It's like that. So I push myself out of my comfort zone, and it's a really hard thing for me to do naturally, but I've kind of learned to embrace that niggling feeling, thinking this is how we will grow as a brand, by pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone. But in saying that, we have had to say no to quite a lot of things. So the first thing I would say, I think particularly because sometimes saying yes to things for short-term gain means that you're not looking out for your sort of long-term goal. An example of that is maybe a collaboration with someone for a short-term gain. So it might be instant access to their followers. It might be an initial sort of surge of sales. But really, as you grow and where you see your brand, do you want to be associated with sort of the style of that person, or who that person is, or where they might be going? You might not want to be sort of tied into that as your kind of brand mirror for the sort of long term of your brand. So the first thing, I guess, for us to chat about would be working with influencers. We get inundated. I mean, this week in particular, we have had so many people contact us. In the early days, I definitely did grab every opportunity, but I would be really specific about it. So where we had a lot of people who maybe had started following us, if there was already that engagement with them and it felt like an organic fit, then I would choose to work with whoever it was. And honestly, I've had a really good experience with it. Everyone I've worked with has been so amazing, and they've always been really professional. So I'm not saying don't get the opportunities to work with influencers. I think it's just as we have grown, that net of our like brand awareness has been cast further. So then we get people that maybe we just don't see ourselves aligning with brand wise. So we do have to say no. And it might just be that maybe they just feel too young, and actually the majority of our customer bases are above a certain age point. So we do now tend to veer more towards working with 30 plus. And it might be the way in which they're consistent. It might be the way in which they start. It sort of depends on which knit it is and the product we want to promote. But I would say that we have to be quite firm And I think also you get a sense, don't you, of how people are and the way that they react with you. So some people can be really aggressive. Some people can be really passive aggressive if they don't get the immediate answer they want. And that to me is just an automatic no. We've never had a soured relationship with an influencer, and I really don't intend to start. So we're quite good judges, I think, of that. But I think if you are looking to become an influencer, what I would say is, first of all, this is a really obvious one, but if you are kind of cold calling brands, at least make the effort to find out the name of the person you're contacting. The sort of blanket DMs we get or emails where it's just like too slow love, blah, 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 blah. That's an instant no. Second of all, I think it would be really good if you already are engaging with us. You don't have to buy something. We know that our pieces are investment pieces, but if you're at least engaging with us, that is a really big win. And not just engaging on the day that you've decided you want something. I mean, like months of engagement before. So you have to put that time in to try and build a relationship. And 3, I would say that, as I said before, sometimes it's just that we are like seeing ourselves market a particular piece to a particular demographic, and it just might be that you don't fit in within that demographic. So that's all it is. But saying no to, we have had to say no to people we don't feel are the right fit, and that's nothing personal. It's just us kind of protecting our view of what we feel aligns with the brand. I think the next thing about saying no to something is products. So we've actually had quite a lot of collaboration requests, which again is a little bit like the influencers, where it's like, if it doesn't align with our brand, I mean, really, I would never do a collaboration unless I was naturally drawn to it anyway. Michaela's jewelry collaboration we've done the necklace with is a really good example of that. I feel like she literally ticks every box for us as a brand, and we really have enjoyed our working relationship with her. So that is something that we hope will carry on. So we are venturing out to new products, which we're not doing loads. We're being really careful, really considered. It's taking a lot of time. There's been a few nightmares. We've talked about the t-shirts a lot, but the t-shirts are an example of where it sounds like it's simple. It's like just printing on a plain t-shirt should be the easiest thing in the world, but obviously we're not making it quick and easy. We're doing it slow and considered, creating our t-shirts from scratch, the block, the cotton, where it's made, all of those things, and it has been a journey, but we haven't accepted what we have been given. So where we had gone through our second supplier, who was a British one, great initially, and then the actual production was awful. So, and we had to go through all of it with a fine-tooth comb and select the ones that we felt were up to our standard, and then the rest have all been sort of sample sale seconds. But there's another product at the moment that we are working on, and we've just got to our second sample phase, and we're so excited about it, and it fits every sort of model and that we would normally work towards. So it's, you know, handmade using dead stock. The product is a dead stock material, and we found a really small supplier, and we've got to our second sample phase, and honestly, taking it out of the box yesterday, it's just not up to my standard. It's not up to the standard of Slow Love. And I honestly felt quite heartbroken taking it out of the box, because I just was like, it's not good enough. It's just not good enough. So we have had to go back to the drawing board with that, and we're gutted because we thought it would be something we'd be launching before Christmas. But again, that is something that I've had to say no to. And we've spent a lot of money on it. 2 prototypes, which have been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And all the back and forth, we've already bought all the dead stock material. So I've already bought that. It means I either have to find someone to buy it off me or find somewhere to store it. And it feels like it's a huge waste of money, but it's not, because we're not going to cross that idea off completely. We still have a prototype idea, but it's like, we want something like this, but much better. So, and it's been a very steep learning curve, because it's been working with a product that I've got no experience in. Grace has actually got a little bit of experience in it, but it's something that I've had to just axe It hasn't felt right. It's not felt right for a while. But seeing the actual workmanship, and this is a sample, it's not even the production. It should be the very, 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 very best, but it's not. So that's another thing. I think just trust your gut. The moment I took it out of the box, I knew it wasn't good enough, and that's where we've stopped. So I'm on to the third. The third thing is we were going to do a really big press event. So it was like end of summer, I think, last year. And again, it started to feel like it had run away with us. This event didn't stick with our core values. So we were doing things we would never do. We were sort of press ganging editors into, press ganging is a really strong word for it, but we were basically paying them to come. What was the idea? Which is just not how we do things. We want people to come. We want them to want to be there. And we also wanted to celebrate our community. So I decided to put a pin in that, and we ended up doing one ourselves with our customers, not necessarily editors, and it was really good. So that is another one that we've said no to, quite a big thing. And again, I have spent time and money on that, got a little bit down the line and just realised it was going to be a bigger costly mistake, so we didn't do it. The fourth one is collab offers. So I did touch on this earlier, but if you get approached, it's a really, really flattering idea that somebody wants to pair with you. But the reason people want to do that is they obviously have something to gain from it. So as flattering as it is, you cannot get sucked into that feeling of how amazing it is that somebody else, even if they've got sort of a similar size following to you, you really need to think about the long-term reason as to why you're doing it. And if it is more of a vanity thing for you, or it's because you don't want to say no, but it doesn't feel right ultimately, or if you think it's going to, quick short-term cash, obviously there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're looking short-term, you're ultimately, is that going to be what's best for your brand in the future? Do you want your brand to be associated with that person? Do you want people to remember your brand because of that person long term, or do you want to be remembered because of something else that you might be associating yourself with? So we have had quite a few collaboration offers which I've turned down, mainly because, and even if we love that person, and we, more often than not I do love them, which is why it's been harder for me to deal with, is ultimately, do I see ourselves being associated with that person forever, or are we going to outgrow that, or do we want to go in a different direction? I will always have my reasons, but you have to look at the longevity. And if you think long term it's not going to work for you as a collaboration, then you need to say no. I think one of the last ones is, and I find this really hard this is something I actually find quite overwhelming, because I find when everybody wants input now, especially with our bigger team, it can become quite overwhelming. And I am quite sort of quiet. I'm not quiet. I think I'm confident in my design aesthetic, and I'm quietly confident about what I think will work well. But when everybody is inputting ideas, I find it quite hard to navigate in a polite way, I think is probably the best way to say it. I also love the fact that everybody has opinions. I think when it comes to the fit and size, it's really important. But if I have a design idea and the sample comes back and then somebody says they don't actually like that colour, or somebody says they think that should be longer because it needs to cover someone's bum, or somebody says, I don't know if our customers will have that, and then all of a sudden you let the external noise come in, that design then gets very diluted. And Ellen, who's is a new designer who's working with us, she described this happening a lot in her old job, and she said it would Frankenstein the idea, which is exactly what happens. And I find that very overwhelming, where you end up with a sort of mishmash of a design where you initially had a really strong thought about it, and then it gets pulled apart and put back together. So I'm very, very, very fortunate with this, because Grace and I are sisters. So when Grace and I work together, she quite often just knows what I'm thinking about, or she might be like, why didn't I go back to this? You were trying to tell me in your own way, and this is what you want. So the alien jumper, for example, when we were looking at doing it, the spaced out jumper, we had so many different initial samples, and I was like, I just feel it needs to be like simple, really clean, but it needs to be like fun and not sort of something that you would necessarily like. It just, I can't, like, I tried to explain it to her, and we went sort of all the way around, and then ended up with a spaced out design, which everybody loves, and I love it so much. But working with Ellen, it's easier in a way because she's also remotely works, but we have like one-to-one meetings the whole time, so there's no opportunity for everybody to jump in. But I do think if you are working and you have a strong sense of what your customer will want, you need to really hold on to that and stay true to your vision. I think you need to know why you want that vision. So whether it's like the concept is because you know there's a gap in the market, or you know your customers have been asking for it, but your sort of taste and your curation of how it should be done, when you have that brief, whether you are the designer or you're working with a designer, I think you need to stay very true to that and kind of say no to any external noise, just so that there is like a clarity as to what you want. I think that's probably my last say no, because I think it's really important. It's going to get harder for us as a brand as we're growing, because I will want to, but to work on every single product is quite tricky. I think, or if you do some sort of collaborative design, you need to make sure that you have the right person that you're working with, so you're sort of both on the same wavelength, is another thing I would maybe suggest. Another point that I've said no to a lot, but a situation I've said no to a lot is being wholesaled. So this is the same for a lot of product-based businesses. For us, we've had agents want to work on our behalf, very pushy agents who have wanted to work on our behalf to wholesale us. And we've been approached directly by quite big wholesalers, so ones that you definitely will have heard of. Like one in particular I nearly said yes to. It was really flattering. They are a brand who I think our demographic definitely shops at, but the ties working with that and their stipulations just didn't sit well with us. So really for us it wasn't worth it. I think you have to look at lots of different sides of working on wholesale. Firstly, if you've always been D2C, which is direct to consumer, do you have the margins to cope with wholesale? Because they will obviously want to take a margin. Do you have the production capacity? So for us, as an example, if we were to wholesale with Selfridges, just as an example, we are not organised enough yet. So we are planning sort of a year in advance, but really they would probably want us to be planning 2 years in advance even. We're just not there yet. The level of our production isn't big enough. We obviously, everything is in-house for us at Slow Love, as in our fulfillment and the commission of the knits. So you need to think about whether you could keep up with that demand. You need to think about really if it's worth it. Is that wholesaler ticking the right box for your demographic? It's a lot of additional paperwork. I'm very lucky that I have an Isabel, and she does a lot of that admin, but it is a lot of admin. A lot of wholesalers are notoriously bad at paying, and I hate to say it, and it doesn't get said enough, but if you are a small brand, can you afford to shoulder that cost for months and spend a lot of time chasing payments, which is definitely something that will happen to you. I think if you're going to do it, if you're going to work with a wholesaler, it has to be worth it, as in it might not even be worth it from a monetary value. It's like, is it the right place to get your name seen? That's really the only reason I would do it. Personally, for us as Slow Love, I wouldn't want to risk our hand knits being manhandled by another company, because you have to be really careful with them. A lot of people trying them on, jewelry catches, all of that stuff. So, I'm not even getting into the, like, when I've gone into Liberty and seen that some hand knits are on hangers, it's like, oh, why? So I think you need to say no to those. I suppose that comes under the opportunities, but if you want to wholesale, I think you need to have a strategic plan in place. For us in particular, the hand knits are really not an option for us to wholesale. I think on the opposite of saying no, if you say yes to too much, it can have such a detrimental effect to your state of mind, but also at the cost of your brand. We said yes to too much in one way at the beginning. So within the first year of Slow Love, we increased our production too much that our cash flow really struggled, and we spent a sort of a year digging ourselves out of a Shopify loan. So that was one where that was a really tricky one for us to navigate. It's only because Isabel and I have talked about this before, but our relationship, talking so open and frankly about the finance of the company, made it very easy for us to sort of plan and keep money aside for VAT and things like that. So we were at least on top of all of that. But that was where we said yes too quickly. That was my mistake, saying yes to my own suggestion, basically, and getting a bit carried away. And then last year at Christmas in December, we said yes. We organised too much, probably, that we could handle. So we were doing so many different events, pop-up events. I mean, I would still go to see Kindred of Ireland, but we were doing different pop-up events, and it just ended up becoming almost too much. Abby was moving house. Shard only kind of just started. We'd come back from New York. We had so many different things happening, and we were putting on like one event after another, and it became almost too much. Like, we were all burnt out by the end. Like, physically, all our immune systems were hanging by a thread. So I think you have to be really mindful of that, to the point where we are discussing basically taking like a 4-day weekend on the run up to this, like, last 6 weeks before Christmas, so we all get a quick break from here and all the work that will be involved in that sort of busy 6 weeks. The other thing I would say that I said yes to way too much was just being involved in everything. The sort of, yes, as an owner, you have to have your like hand in every pie, but by doing that and not allowing myself to have even the afternoon just to sort of chill out means, for me, where my kind of job role within the brand is the sort of creative director, I start to lose my sense of creativity. So whether it's coming up with strategic business ideas, which I like to chat through with Abby a lot, and if we ever get one-on-one time like we did yesterday, we can chat through that, and it gives me a chance just to sort of collect and focus my thoughts. And I always explain this to the girls, like, if you're running, I can't be running with my head down, which is what I'm doing when I'm like mucking in with everything. I have to be the one looking out ahead down the road so that we know how to plan and where and what the future looks like. Which again is why I'm meant to be working from home every Thursday, which I haven't started doing yet. But that's my sort of action plan to make sure that doesn't happen with me. But it's definitely something that I've seen happen to a lot of people, and you just need to be aware of it. And I think at the same time, saying yes to taking on too many different product avenues, like diversing your brand too much. I've seen it happen quite a few times where people just end up being like, oh, that does well for that brand, I'm going to start doing some of those, or those sell really well for that brand, I'm going to start doing some of those. Unless you are the one coming up with that concept, it's just going to be like diluted noise around your brand, and then you start to kind of lose who you are. So that's definitely something that I'm learning, or reading about and seeing, and hopefully learning from other people's mistakes. But yeah, I think that's my little roundup. Isabel will be back next week, so for that. Thank you for listening.